Back live with you tonight. Right, let's get some analysis then to this new setup, restructuring, so to speak, happening in the ANC following that special NEC committee meeting that took place this weekend. We are joined now by Rebone Tau. He's a political analyst. Rebone, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. I mean, one note that I got after this list was released, one interpretation is that if the MWC was seen as a clean sweep for the CR slate, this is even more deeper. So, in other words, that this particular structure or this particular deployment shows that President Cyril Ramaphosa is comfortable in that NEC.
Good evening, Tabo, and good evening to the viewers at home. Absolutely. This is actually a true reflection of the outcomes of conference, where we saw that, he got overwhelming support when you look at the margin, between him and Dr. Mkhize, but also looking at the composition of the NEC, of those who supported him, that made it through to the National Executive Committee. But what is interesting that what people also need to look at, the power dynamics within that CR faction. So it's not about him only being in charge, but then there is also dynamics. And when you look at this committee, you can see, those dynamics that are playing themselves out within the CR22 faction.
So how does, for example, he manage, for example, to get some big names out of these committees? One particular one, if you look at it, Lindiwe Sisulu is out of this committee.
No, absolutely. She's not even in the NWC, so it was given that she won't chair any committee. Like in the last NEC, she was in the NWC, she was chairing. People like Nkosazana didn't make it in the NWC, they're not chairing. So, if you look at this list of the portfolio chairs, the only person that they've given room is for Dr. Zweli Mkhize. And I think because, when you speak to some people in the ANC, the issue of the NWCA really angered a lot of people, that when you talk about renewal and the unity of the organization, what does that mean? Because it can't be that when you talk about the unity of the organization and you go for an NWC and you take everything, the ANC is going to its election next year. And I can tell you even today, when I was speaking to even some PEC members, and they were saying that this has got an impact of really harming the ANC at elections, when people see that the party is not united based on who are the people that will now have to go on the ground to do the door-to-door. And some people will hold back and not do that door-to-door.
Yeah. Talking of doing door-to-door, Mdumiseni Ntuli appearing now full-time at Luthuli House. We actually thought he was going to maybe occupy the position that is now occupied by Mahlengi, but they seem to have, they believe, at least at NEC, that he's much better there in terms of election campaigning. A role, I think, if I'm correct, you correct me here, that was previously played by the now SG, Fikile Mbalula.
No, absolutely. But what you must also understand is not the first time that Mdumiseni finds himself at Luthuli House. Before he went to KwaZulu-Natal to lead the ANC in the province, by the way, Mdumiseni was working at Luthuli House as the manager of organizing, so he's actually going back to Luthuli House again. So he's got a better understanding also of the operations within the party.
Yeah. A good choice, you think, for elections? I think you're saying, what part of the considerations that they looked at was governance, party building ability, organizing ability and strategy, but also individuals who would have served either in parliament or in the legislature?
The thing is that the ANC really, we need to give them a chance and see if these guys will really do the mandate given by a conference. Unfortunately, we're still waiting to see the resolutions of conference, to see some of the things that the conference has resolved on, to see that will they really work towards, 2024 galvanizing South Africans behind the banner of the ANC, and will they come up with new ideas, fresh ideas? Because South Africans, I think, they're tired of also being asked in every election, what is it that we're not doing, and when these guys go there, they ask them same thing that they asked them 5 years ago, so they need this refreshing strategy for this elections. But I think let's give them a chance and see what, because this NEC, by the way, also I think it's a refreshing NEC, new faces in this National Executive Committee, a lot of young people. So I think it will be very interesting to see what are they able to do between now and elections, and turning around the party. But unfortunately, factional politics also tend to play themselves out. So they will have to really try and save the party, but still try to navigate within factional politics.
Yeah. Speaking of factional politics and the experience of young people, but also the older generation coming in, suppose the appointment of Frank Chikane, Reverend Frank Chikane, as the chair of the Integrity Commission will be another talking point. How would you categorize a chairmanship of Reverend Chikane when you compare it to that of Mashamba?
I think Frank Chikane, over the past few years, we know that he actually has been very vocal in the public domain, critiquing some of the things that are done within the ANC. So it will be very interesting to see. But also, that's what I'm saying, that we're waiting to actually get the documents of conference out, go through. Also, because I heard the spokesperson earlier on talking about how they have strengthened the integrity committee, because you must remember that the biggest problem that has always been that the National Executive Committee is the referee and the player at the same time, and that's why a lot of issues remain hanging, around individuals within the National Executive Committee who have been found compromised and so forth. So one will have to see that, do they really have the teeth to really take to task members who have compromised or who have brought the name of the organization to disrepute?
Yeah, I suppose the litmus test would be, the biggest test for this Integrity Commission will be how they deal with Palapala, which we know the previous Integrity Commission up until now has not released a report, or if it has, we have not seen it.
I mean, the Palapala is not with the Integrity Committee. If you recall, Tabo, going to conference, Integrity Committee, the last NEC meeting, or second last NEC meeting, they went and delivered the report. And the NEC resolved that let it go to conference. And I can tell you, it was not discussed at conference. And then it was resolved that let it go back to the NEC to be discussed there. And it's a bit worrying, that members of the ANC did not fight at conference to actually discuss the integrity report, because one of the things they said, the integrity report will be part of the organizational report. But now Palapala is back on the table of the National Executive Committee. We don't know when it will be on the agenda of the National Executive Committee.
So as far as you see it, it will not be making it back to the Integrity Commission again?
The thing is that because now it's on the agenda of the National Executive Committee, and as we're just talking about, if you look at the deployments, of committees, the NWC, President Ramaphosa is in charge. And I think also what will be very interesting to see, because we know that there's a reshuffling that is coming after the budget speech. Hopefully by Sunday, maybe the latest, we should have that reshuffling. That also will then change the dynamics. It will be very interesting to see what will the NEC say. But I don't see it going back to the Integrity Committee unless there's new evidence that comes up and where President Ramaphosa has to appear before the Integrity Committee.
Right, let's look at the deployment committee, still being headed by the Deputy President, Secretary General, responsible for the coordination of the work of the committee. But I see here, I suppose there are always represented alliance partners in this deployment committee. Does their representation hold any weight?
The deployment committees, they sit there, and the leagues also sit there. But also, it depends. Sometimes ministers can do as they please interacting with the president. So them being there and looking at how, the alliance actually was the biggest loser at the ANC conference. You had Lozi not coming back as the National Executive Committee. You had people like Tulas, people like Blade. So this really questions then the strength of the alliance in this committee. But when you look at that deployment committee, you can see that President Ramaphosa is in charge. All the people that are in that committee from the National Executive Committee are close allies of the president. So that means the deputy president will just be a chair of that committee and nothing else. And we might see another Didi Mabuza era again under this National Executive Committee.
Something that you particularly would be interested in, especially since you have been writing about the ANC Youth League, is the issue of political education, and David Makhura heading that now full-time in the ANC. Do you think it will make any difference? I mean, if you continue to see, especially towards the various BGMs and PEC general meetings and so on and so forth, the members of the ANC not acting consistent with the values that the party is aspiring to. It's just very, very glaring for all to see.
Yeah, well, in 2012, by the way, the ANC took a resolution of a decade of Bakeda, which came to an end, in 2022 December. I don't know if Makhura will. I think the other thing is that between now and elections, at least he's full-time in Luthuli House. He doesn't have any government responsibilities, so I think he might have enough time, to invest in the political education. But also, when you speak to some in the ANC, even about the curriculum, of that. For example, the Ora Tambo School, a lot of people are not happy about it. And I'm not talking about ordinary members, I'm talking about seasoned cadres, of the ANC, some who are even veterans, complaining about the political school curriculum. And one of the things is that, what people don't understand, you have people like Makhura coming from SASCO, so the politics of SASCO, for example, and politics of the Youth League are very different, They focus more on Marxism and Lenin and so forth, and those are not politics of the Youth League. So that also will be very interesting to see, does this also change? Because we're still trying to understand the character of the ANC over the years, what the ANC stands for as an organization. So that will be very interesting to see which shape and direction does the ANC take from an ideological point of view, because we don't know ideologically what the ANC still stands for today.
Rebone Tau, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, political analyst there, Rebone Tau.